manage the waiting room if anybody else shows up. And Liv, I didn't mention this, but we should introduce you to the group before we pop in. So, do you mind?
No, I don't mind. Hi, everyone. I know some of you on the call cross over into the Regional Child Care Coalition's PLC, Carla. But I'm just providing help today because our Sable's out of office, so I'll be providing some in-meeting support and looking forward to listening in on the conversation. But for those of you who don't know me, my name's Liv Rao. I'm the program manager for the Regional Child Care Coalitions.
Great. Thank you, Liv, and thank you for the support because these people know I cannot do all of it by myself. That is for sure. It would be one big mess up after another. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to our current sub-recipients and those of you who have been a part of the PLC community during your Child Care Innovation Fund ECE WRAP funding cycle. It's great to see all of you here together, and we're happy to be able to open up the remaining PLCs in this funding cycle to our larger ECE WRAP community. So as we think about this round of ECE WRAP funding winding down, we want to expand your ability to connect and hear from others doing the same work in the state. And it really does take all of us collaborating and learning and growing together. Perfect example of that, having Liv here. We've got some cross-project work going on that she'll be able to take back into the regional coalition work, knowing more about ECE WRAPs. So today we're going to dig into something that comes up a lot, which is OJT goals, RTI goals, skill development, and how mentors fit into all of that. So I know these are topics that continue to generate a lot of questions. So we're going to spend our time today looking at these questions from a new angle, one that might shift how you think about skill development and career progression from occupation to occupation in early childhood education. The way we've been talking about it isn't necessarily wrong. There's just another lens that we haven't fully explored yet that might make this work a lot clearer. So with that, we will go ahead and get started. We'll just do an agenda review. This is a pretty thorough agenda here, but we're doing our welcome and agenda review and learning objectives. Then we're going to move into an engagement warm-up activity. It's going to get us prepped for the conversation, but also for engagement with one another. We're going to ground ourselves in our existing resources. And then, as you can see, we have time for peer-to-peer connection. So you guys will have some time together in small groups to be able to have discussion and think about this collectively. Then we're just going to review what the next couple of months look like and talk about some next steps and move to closing. Any questions about the agenda? All righty, next one. All right, so I'm about to do a whole lot of talking, getting us prepped for what's next. So I would love to ask for you all to help me out here. So I want 3 volunteers, one to read each of our one learning objective. So who would like to go first, starting at the top, darker blue box? Carla, thank you, Carla.
All right. So identify how a core ECE competency evolves across levels of the career pathway and describe shifts in independence, complexity, and professional judgment.
Thank you, Carla. I appreciate it. Who's next? We're going to read the, I guess, teal colored box.
I could do it.
Thank you, Beth.
Develop at least one OJT task and corresponding mentor support statement that reflects the progression of a competency and could be applied in their ECE WRAP.
Great. And our last one, who's our last volunteer to read the learning objective in the green box?
I'll read it.
Thank you, Robin.
Reflect on strategies for mentor engagement that support skill progression and plan one approach they could implement in ECE WRAPs.
Great. So thank you all for that. So we're going to dive into what skill progression looks like from occupation to occupation together, and hopefully have a little framework that you might be able to take with you as you dive into this further in your work. So we're going to go to the next slide. So before we jump in, we want to warm up on both the topic and our ability to engage in discussion, since we'll be in small groups today. You'll have a chance to do a lot of discussion. So skill and OJT goals and mentor engagement are topics that continue to have questions surrounding them. So we've heard this through our most recent PLC survey that went out to everybody, and in progress meetings in our past PLCs. So I've noticed, especially since the beginning of the year, that I provide TA on the Michigan ECE career pathway and the professional standards quite regularly. So when reflecting on this topic that we wanted to center the PLC around today, skill and OJT goals and mentor engagement, I was inclined to do the same, just to go back to those resources. But through reflection, being the early educator that I am, that's what we do. I pause, because if we have these resources and we're still asking what skills belong in OJT and RTI and what changes at the next level of occupation, then maybe the challenge isn't just having access to those resources. So we're going to explore these systems, tools, and their resources a bit more today. All right, so here's one key area to ground us in this topic. So the My Registry career pathway defines levels based on education, credentials, and training requirements, not job titles. So you can see that here, and this is a resource that we're always walking back to. So this is the Michigan ECE career pathway. And online it's interactive and you have some drop downs for each of these, so it's expanded. But I just wanted to have you looking at this here on one slide, that we have the foundational levels and then we have the professional levels. And on the other side of this slide, I've expanded out one of these yellow strips, looks like this level P1 plus, because that's where the registered apprenticeship lies. So you can see that it shares possible career opportunities that exist, but it's really outlined, and apprentices and early educators move through this career pathway based on training and educational requirements. And if you're creating jobs in the ECE wrap based on occupations, there's still a question there. Well, how did these align, right? Like, where does an operations manager fit in here? So wraps are built around occupations, often reflected as job titles, with defined skills, competencies, and training requirements for that specific role. So to really use this existing system well, we must shift how we think about the skill development from occupation to occupation. And that brings us to this question: as someone moves through the ECE career pathway, what actually changes about the work that they do? So we're going to explore that a little bit more. This next resource that I've shared with you specifically around leadership development is the Michigan Professional Standards and Competencies for Early Childhood Educators. Beth, you have a question? Go ahead.
Sorry, I do. Can you go back a slide, please? Something's just struck me, which never struck me before. So the P1 Plus is our apprenticeship. And I know that many of the apprenticeships don't include college classes, yet the P1 is heavily weighted on college classes, as is the F3. So does that mean that, I don't know if that means that I don't know what that means.
Absolutely. And I know I have some other early educators on here that can fill any gaps out that I might leave. But what the P1, my understanding, is meant to do is to be like accentuate that which is required in each of the professional levels. So you can see professional level 1, they're saying you need 12 semester hour credit hours in ECE field or a child related field. So the registered apprenticeship would be in addition to it adds on to it. Do you see what I'm saying? So even if the registered apprenticeship isn't requiring uh, college credit hours, what you do in that registered apprenticeship is in addition to that requirement. So that's kind of the gist of the plus there. I'll also add that if you do use college credit requirements in your registered apprenticeship, that could apply to the college credit requirements of that level. And Carla or anybody else want to add anything to that that might be helpful for Beth?
Sure. So none of our trainings are specifically college credit because we provide all the training ourselves. And this is the part that really bothers me because we have a really amazing apprenticeship program that's very in depth. And I I keep advocating like this needs work because our 2-year apprenticeship program like basically is not represented well here, in my opinion. So, but we are working on, well, anyone can take their CDA certificate to most community colleges that have an early childhood program and get like around 9 or 10 college credits for that CDA program, depending on the college. Um, but we are also working on like, what is our entire apprenticeship program worth? Like, how do we meet those goals for community college so that it can also be additional college credits towards that associate's degree?
Absolutely. So the experiential credit for the learning that takes place is another way that the registered apprenticeship could translate into these credit hours at this level, but it depends on the relationship and the agreements that you have with the colleges and universities that you're working with.
Yeah.
And Beth, your question and Carla, what you had to say points out something really great, which is this is a system we're working within, and the system isn't perfect, but it is the system that all those who are working in licensed centers and even license exempt providers are working within to have higher quality points, to get bigger reimbursements through DHHS. So I want to make sure that we understand it, and I'm glad you're asking those questions because that helps us understand it more. But this is, yeah, this is one system that we have to work in. So I want to make sure that we bring it into the context of our conversation. Okay, let's see if I can move this slide without it going crazy on me. There we go. All right, so we're going to go back into another resource we have, which are the Michigan Professional Standards and Competencies for Early Childhood Educators. So if the career pathway is the system that we live within and we move through based on our academic and training requirements, the professional standards come at this completely differently. So we're going to read through that and explore that a little bit more now. So the professional standards and competencies for early childhood education outline what professionals working with children from birth through age 8 need to know and be able to do in an early learning setting. Sounds like the great place to go to for how we should build OJT skills and RTI and what we should be working on, right? Okay. So with the adoption of these standards, we also embrace that the title early childhood educator is a title that includes everyone in our field, recognizing that we all play a role in education and the development of young children. So that's something that's a little bit different, right? Because when we've been talking about creating occupations in ECE wrap, it's like there's the early educator, and then there's the child specialist, and then there's the operations manager. And these are all different jobs, and they should all be doing different things, right? No, the professional standard says that's not how it works. What they say is that we're all early educators and we all have a role to play in each of these spaces. So each standard includes 3 professional levels. There's ECE 1, 2, and 3. And those levels reflect an increase of the core skills that we work to develop at entry level. So it reflects increasing knowledge, skills, and leadership responsibilities. Growth happens over time through education, experience, and ongoing professional development. And then I just had this little bit here so that you knew what was included in those standards. My hope is that you take a deep dive into them and use them as a tool. So I wanted to highlight what's available to you in these standards. All right, so let me go a little bit further into that here. So looking at this slide here. So on one side, we have the career pathway, and on the other side, we have these professional standards. What I hope we can understand before we move into the rest of the conversation is that every single one of these professional standards is found at every level of this career pathway. So even at level F1, they should have some knowledge of promoting children's health and wellness, developmentally, culturally, and linguistically appropriate teaching practices. And then that skill, as they move up through the career pathway, it moves from what the professional standards are saying are level 1, 2, and 3. So big picture here on this slide is every single one of these professional standards is found at every level of the career pathway. So, okay, great. But we also talk about the CDA a lot, right? And some of us are aligning our registered apprenticeships with the CDA subject areas. So now, Nicole, you're talking about professional standards. Like, which one do you want us to use? So I just want to demonstrate here, and this isn't anything I made. This is part of the professional standards. They communicate to you how the Michigan professional standards align with the CDA subject areas. Okay, so you can see that that's something that's already been thought through, and they work well together. And this graph here, this table, shows you how they come together. All right, go to the next slide. And I just wanted to show you this here, although I'm sure you can imagine that if the CDA subject areas and the professional standards go together and align, then that means that the CDA subject areas align in the same way with the career pathway that the professional standards do. So every one of these CDA subject areas are found at every level of the career pathway. All right, so I'm gonna give you a chance to think about this a little bit more, and we're gonna do some practice. And this is the engagement activity. So this is the longest engagement activity we've ever done together, I think. But I felt like there had to be some build up to it. So I want you to think of two people in any profession. It can even be in your own workplace, someone at entry level and someone at mid level. They might even be in the same role. Now here's the question that I want you to respond to in the chat. And Liv, you can go ahead and put that in the chat if it's there. What is the one thing a mid-level staff person does differently? Not just more of, but differently. So think about that. It can be in, like I said, same role, same different job, whatever. But I want you to think about how what does it look like in action at entry level versus a mid-level? What's the difference? And I'll go ahead and check the chat as things come in. Take a minute to think about that. So not busier, not more task. It's a different way of practicing the same work. Want to be sure that you write your thoughts down too, because we're going to come back to this reflection at the end of the PLC. All right, Jordan. Hey, Jordan, I didn't see you come in. Welcome. Mid-level has more experience. Entry level, oh, we got lots coming in here. Entry level is applying book smarts to a new area. Right, so they might know through training what it is, but the actual application of it looks different. All right, let's see what else is coming in here. Anna says, there is a practiced ease in doing it so many times. I love that, Anna. Carla reflects on their experience and knowledge to ensure they are using best practices. So it's not just doing it, it's thinking about what they're doing. And Evelyn, the mid-level will look at tasks from a different perspective. Yep, they have more experience. Robin shares more hands-on with customers at the entry level. Okay, yep. Karen, a different, broader frame or scope to tasks. And Robin says mid-level is higher overview of programs and execution. Okay, so you're describing things like how they implement differently, how they respond, professional judgment and practice, observation and assessment, professional collaboration and leadership. All right, Kelly shares mid-level may do things as second nature, which I think is what Anna was getting to, and entry level may need to follow more process guides. Mid-level may share out more with leadership. Absolutely. Thank you all for that. Okay, so now we're going to walk through this slide together. We're going to look at a competency together. Okay, so before we do this, I want to share that the Michigan Professional Standards and Competencies for Early Educators has 9 standards. And within those standards, there are 3 to 5 competencies for each. So this competency that we're looking at right now is Standard 8, which is focused around leadership and development. This is one of the standards that I've been sharing with a lot of you often when talking about how we support leadership development. Okay, and so we're going to look at this one together. So you have your competency here, and then you can see they have the ECE 1, which they call foundational level, ECE 2, proficient level, and ECE 3, advanced level. And in each of those, they tell you what this skill here, right? Ensuring compliance, focusing on quality standards, using tools and approach to make that happen. They break it out what that might look like at each level. So this competency is the skill, and then these levels focus on the skill progression. So when you're creating your entry level positions, which, you know what, I always get it confused. So there's child specialist and early educator. One's an entry level position, one's more of an advanced level position. So your entry level might be focused on what they're calling foundational level skills. And then the next level would be focused on proficient skills. And then maybe if you were creating an operations manager occupation, you'd focus on the advanced level skills and what that looks like. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move to the next slide. Okay, so here's the key takeaway. They aren't new skills. These are skills that they become more complex, more independent, more intentional ways of using the same core skills. And this is exactly what skill progression looks like. So the base skill stays the same. It's the way that it's enacted that evolves. So today, as we move through our work, we're not asking what new skills do we add to the next occupation. We're asking how does this competency or skill show up at these different levels where the occupation lives. So one of the things you have to do when you're creating these occupations is figure out at which level does this live. And so to answer that, we're going to use the career pathway, these professional standards, thinking about OJT goals and thinking about mentorship support to kind of practice that and figure it out. And then I just have this little visual here, like what does this maybe look like in a garden, right? At the foundational level, they're following instructions. Maybe they can only handle one plant at a time. Moving into the next section, they can maybe adjust things, add more plants. respond to what's actually happening. And at the advanced level, maybe they're mentoring other people. They're designing the system to work better. All right. And check the time here, how we're doing. All right. So I'm going to give us a competency to work through together. It's going to be the same one that we just looked at. And we're going to revisit it. So in the chat, we're going to respond to what does this competency look like in action at entry level? So what does it look like in action at a more advanced level? And focus on how the work is done, not just what the task is. So go ahead and pop that into the chat for us, and we'll see what you guys have to say. What might that actually look like? You can see you're working on it. Give you a few more seconds to wrap it up, and then we'll do just a quick share out before we move on. Does anybody want to share out and come off of mute?
I can. I was still typing it, but I'll just go ahead and say it and then I'll finish it and hit enter. So in entry level, I was thinking like if it's somebody working in the classroom, they're following the licensing rules that they're taught and required to carry out. They may not fully understand why. They just know they're taught this way. This is how it's supposed to go. And then likely tries to follow those rules. And then at a more advanced level, somebody is ensuring that others are following the rules and the standards and making sure that also themselves, but ensuring that everything is followed exactly the way it should be. So like if we're talking about licensing rules and they're following the licensing rules, so when somebody comes to visit, everybody's doing the same thing and they're like likely mentoring other people and leading the way in those
Yeah.
standards.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can give you some, I'll bring this to life a little bit and give you some personal experience. So at foundational level one, a lot of times you might hear people say to you, you can't do that. That's a licensing rule. You can't do that. That's a licensing rule. And you're like, what are all these licensing rules I can't do? I don't understand why I can't reheat a bottle for a baby. I don't understand why their parent brings the baby in sleeping in their car seat. Why can't I leave them sleeping in their car seat? In ECE2, you kind of have a feel for what those might look like. And also like, I know there's a TA manual. So if I have a question about a licensing rule or somebody's telling me it's a rule and I don't think it is, or I have a question about why, I know there's a resource here that I can go to help navigate that. And at the advanced level, it might be like, wow, this rule is really challenging for us to implement and it's not supporting us. Like, how can we make sure that we are following this rule to its intention and also doing it in a way that is working for our children and our families? So there's an example of what that might look like. Okay, thank you all for that. Moving on. All right, so now we're going to connect this directly to registered apprenticeship design. So we're going to use a framework to do this for the rest of the day that hopefully you can take back with you when assessing your own RTI and OJT goals. Okay, so the framework is naming the competency, naming the skill progression, and then you're going to pick an OJT task to support that skill progression. And then I also want you to identify what kind of mentor support might help that skill progression in place. So that's the framework. So I'm going to assign you competencies in your small group so you don't have to go through the whole 20 some odd page document. But from that competency, you're going to name the skill progression, what's actually changing. What does that look like? Then you're going to talk about, okay, what do they need to practice during OJT to have competency in that skill? And then how could we use mentors to support skill progression in this competency? All right, let me animate this forward. And because we're talking about mentors, I want to make sure that we talk about, well, what do mentors do? And just give you a little bit of a frame that you can work off of to keep it simple. So you could focus on modeling, side-by-side observation, guiding questions, structured debrief, and feedback on documentation. And then one thing I didn't mention that I wanted to mention a couple, 2 slides ago, but since we're talking about mentors, I'll talk about it here. MyAC is putting out a mentorship training program. So if you recall, I think we had a conversation about this maybe last year, and we were giving feedback and asking questions, which was supporting the development of this training program. So they've actually started to launch it. The first cohort is going to take place in September. And so Liv is going to pop the link to that information, the website, in the chat. And they are taking interest forms right now. So if you have any mentors in your programs who you want to add some training opportunities for and share with, that would be great. I also saw on there that there's a $3,000 completion stipend. And so that's a nice little incentive too. Okay. All right, so we're going to go to the next slide. So this is what we're going to do in our small groups. So because I'm going to assign you competencies into your groups, I'm going to pop into your groups to give you that competency. So before I do that, you're going to take a minute to introduce yourself, name, region where you work, and number of years you've been working in or alongside early childhood education. And then by that time, hopefully I will have popped in to give you the competency. You'll have a little bit of individual time to reflect on that competency. You're going to identify the skill progression, so what's actually happening. You're going to think about a specific OJT task that would support that progression. And then I want you to identify what mentor support would be needed as well. Then you're going to come back into your group and you're going to share out your examples with one another. And then you're going to pick out which example you want to share out. How's that sound? Any questions? Okay, and then I just want to check here. Oh, somehow miraculously, we landed on the time that we were supposed to be on. So, okay, we've got enough time to do this exactly how it is showed out. So I'm going to go ahead. Liv, could you pop in the professional standards into the chat? And then while I am getting you all into groups, if you want to get that document up, that might be helpful for your conversation. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Of course not. All right. I thought that it was gonna have me do this for me, and it did not. But that's okay. We'll do it. Perfect. We're gonna have 3 rooms. All right, I'm going to send you all there now. And Liv, can you put the instructions into the chat as well so that they have them?
Yep, everything should be in there.
Okay, great. All right, I'll send you all off and we will see you shortly. You might have to click join to join your room. You got it, Robin?
Yeah, sorry, I like that mentor thing. I'm trying to get to
Oh,
text to my mentors.
oh, yeah, look back. All right. Let's give everybody a chance to settle in here really quickly. Make sure I've got this where I need it to be. Great. All right, everybody, welcome back. We never have enough time in our small groups, but hopefully you had a little bit of time to start diving in and thinking about how to use these standards in alignment with the career pathway and as you're developing out your OJT goals. So we're going to do some group report out. This is the framework that we use to explore this. We identified a competency, we're identified the skill progression, we're going to name the OJT tasks to support it, and what mentor support might be needed as well. So when you report out, you're going to follow that, and we're going to do one from each group. We had 3 groups. So let's have the report out from the group that reviewed Standard 1, Competency 1A. Why don't you all go first?
So we didn't identify anyone. So jump in. Beth, you had some really great language. So did you, Jeremiah. Um,
So I'll read you the competency that we were looking at, which was the competency the standard 1 competency 1B is the one that we chose, which was about child development. And so we're talking about moving from the foundational level to the proficient level and what that would look like. So the change that we are thinking is you would see is the I guess that what kind of okay, the skill progression is that you would be able to apply what you had learned about child development to students in your classroom. And the on-the-job training task might be something like choose a student that you're working with, a child that you're working with, identify the characteristics of the stage of their child development. So identify what stage they are in child development and give like examples that would kind of support that. And then with your mentor, then you would have like a structured debrief on what you had come up with, and then they would give you feedback on the documentation that you had done, and you could discuss it. That's what I was thinking might work, but I may be totally off base.
You're doing great, and I so appreciate you for trying. Is there anybody else in the group that wants to add to that? Jeremiah? Carla? Okay, right. And so you guys, you named the skill progression from the foundational level, right? They're just learning about what is child development in maybe their RTI class or their college course. And then you are wanting them, the skill progression is the application of that knowledge in a real life setting. And so you talked that you might instead of it being the whole class, just having them narrow in on one child to apply that knowledge. And then with the mentor, kind of work through that process together, have a structured guided debrief on what that looks like. The mentor might be developing specific questions to help them reflect on their practice a little bit more and think about what next steps might be. Thank you for sharing. You guys did a great job. All right, so let's go to the next group. You all had standard 2, and it was competency 2B, but I'm open. If you chose another competency to share out, that's fine too. So who would like to report out?
I don't think we selected anybody, so maybe our group will just do it all together.
Yeah.
Our competency was collaborate as partners with families in young children's development and learning through respectful, reciprocal relationships and engagement. Liz and I kind of echoed the same message, that us kind of serving as intermediaries for the apprenticeship, that we don't really get as far into the weeds in the competencies, as we kind of rely on the subject matter experts, which are the childcare businesses, to kind of give us that feedback. So we were very thankful to have Jordan in our group, who is a early childhood expert to help us through. So the part we focus, Jordan, jump in if I mess any of this up.
No, you're doing fine. You're doing fine.
Entry level, we talked about, they're newly introduced to licensing, so they're really probably just focused on what they learned. The task we came up with was Jordan's recommendation of the family style meal. So the entry level person might just be like, all right, we're going to sit down and eat. They might help to model some of the behaviors that they're hoping for the children to do, but not really understanding what exactly to do. The mid-level would probably handle this process without little assistance, serving the meal, but also identifying the needs related to fine motor skills and how they can develop them, and who might need assistance based on their age level. And then the advanced level might be that they would have a strong idea of the processes and procedures. They might be training the entry level staff as they're going. They understand the family style meal, and also creating activities that would support the development of fine motor skills, like as they are doing other activities throughout their day, to make sure it's supporting the mealtime activities. Boom.
And that's individual. There you go, Kelly. You said you couldn't do it. I knew you could. It's just simple individualization for those kiddos, to make sure that the implementation, or I may say that wrong too, of the fine motor skills actually reflected on their lesson plan throughout the day. So Kelly, you did an awesome job.
Absolutely. And as soon as you said family style meal, I knew you had an early educator in that conversation. So I appreciate
he taught Liz and I a lot of things in our 10-minute conversation.
So and just, bringing this to real life a little bit, so family engagement. I also do coaching of infant toddler teachers. I'm happy and proud to report. And one of the conversations I was just having recently is about having the confidence to even talk to families, or like engage families in even like difficult conversations. So using the family style meal, that's one way we know children can learn in the daily routines of the day, whether they're at school or at home. And so bringing it up as something that you want to use as an opportunity to engage with families is brilliant. And also at that entry level, sometimes we're not confident to even be able to say, can we have a conversation about your child chucking meatballs across the table? So I just want to point that out too, that sometimes that confidence piece, what I keep seeing, like, keeps coming up. And so like the more and more they get to practice this, the better. So sometimes like an OJT task might even be like the number of times you approach a family about a hard conversation, those come up regularly. So not just learning the skill, not just applying the skill, but like also paying attention to like how much we're practicing it and how comfortable they are, as Anna had mentioned.
And you have to have a clear understanding that someone that's coming in straight out of college, or just coming making a career change, may handle I guess you would say, a parent discrepancy a lot differently than they would in their previous career choice. So I use a construction worker coming into a classroom for the first time. You'll do a lot of hollering and cussing and fussing in that space when it comes to something getting messed up, because you're dealing with structural, and come into a classroom setting with the same structural idea and the same structural model. you have to be more humble about your approach, and you have to actually, in some cases, not digress, but you have to communicate with the families where they are at their
Yeah.
communication level. And that can be extremely hard for some people to actually change, reframe the way they think about how, I guess, uh, uh, recommending, not necessarily recommending, but to articulate some behaviors that both the family and the student may need to change, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I think you're pointing out like also there's growth and understanding of how we navigate the system. You know, the workplace that they work within has rules, the licensing system has rules, and depending on their experiences, their cultural understandings of how child development works, the approach to that might be different. And if we're asking them to practice different ways or grow in different ways, then yeah, it takes some time to practice it and think about it differently.
Okay,
And
last thing, and I'm a shameless plug.
do it.
I'll be at a conference, Michigan Head Start Association Spring Assembly Conference this May 14th and 15th, talking about roughly some of these same exact things. So if you have any parents that you guys would like to send to come up there to come hear me speak, trust me, it'll be exquisite. And we have other folks that's going to provide resources and things of that nature as well. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you. I'll be quiet
Perfect.
now.
Perfect. All right. And so then we're going to move on to our last group, which was focused on Standard 3, Competency 3A. Who wants to share for this group, for group 3?
I think the plan is me.
Okay. Hi, Robin.
Hi. We had child observation, documentation, and assessment. And again, with us not like, I call myself for the apprenticeship program, I'm the I daughter T crosser, and I let the subject matter experts be the subject matter experts. But that being said, I did just get done with our quarterly mentor apprentice check-ins, and this kind of happened to come up. So our OJT task for that competency is especially for that entry level piece, like recognizing when, let's say, a kiddo has stacked blocks 3 high. That's a milestone, I'm going to say. I don't know if that's too strong of a word, but that's something that, like, ooh, we need to observe and document that on an assessment, perhaps. So that entry level ECE1 is just recognizing like, hey, that just happened. I need to, like, depending on whoever has the like whatever the employer's protocols are. Some of them take pictures. Like, I'll snap a quick picture of Joey with blocks stacked 3 high so that I could remind myself to document that later on. Versus that level 2, like, it's just second nature. Like, there's not even necessarily like a light bulb yet. And for us in our apprenticeship, the observation, documentation, assessment piece tends to come later on in the process, because initially it's an entry level, so they're learning safety, nutrition, that's the focus. And then that kind of progresses to then later on the observation, documentation, assessment. And then what the ECE2 does for us is they then take that, like, that automatic recognition, like, ooh, that just happened, document it, and then they circle back around to use that then in their child development and learning and context to form a plan to get the child to the next level. So now they're stacking 3 blocks. Now the next thing is maybe I said build a castle. So they've got 3 blocks and a top, building a castle. So it's that full circle piece.
Yeah, absolutely. And what kind of mentor support do you think supports that?
Well, and it's funny because, like I said, this is usually one of the last things that ends up towards the end of their 1-year apprenticeship. And it's always one of those things where the mentor teachers are like, it's on our list. We always want to get to it. like the observation assessment, but it's, like there's dojo, there's ASQs, there's, and I don't know what any of those things mean other than I know they're words that my people use. Um,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so,
Oh, go ahead.
oh no, so I was going to say, so with it being as part of the apprenticeship, they have to get to that point where the mentor is like, yeah, we're going to do that next week. I'm going to show you how to document that in dojo, or we've got ASQs coming up next month and you're going to help me do the ASQs. And again, I don't know what any of those words mean, but people do.
Yes, absolutely. And one of them's on this call, and his name is Jordan. I'll tell you that much because Jordan is dropping vocabulary words in the chat that we can all learn from and pay attention to. But I also think like so one of the things that you're saying is you're talking about the tools we use in our profession, right? And there are a lot of different tools. Um, so like you were talking about foundational level to that mid-level, and then just if I can take it a step further with that mid-level to advanced level, one of the things that the advanced level might be thinking about is what tools should we be using? What tools
Bingo.
make sense? How are these tools creating barriers for my staff and my team? And what can we do about that? And then,
And that policy. Oh, I'm
yeah,
sorry, I didn't mean it. And that policy, are we allowed to take pictures of the kiddos to remind ourselves? Because some of my centers do, and some of them don't allow that. So
yep,
that's
yep,
more that next level up thinking.
absolutely. And Jordan, did you want to add something? I heard you come off mute.
I figure I'll see him first.
Let me look at
Well,
the chat.
no, I just put in some more information about what ASQs actually are. They're just a mental health screening tool just to help parents understand, because what happens is that information, the ASQ tool, is actually ran to see if any children have any type of cognitive issue with cognitive delays. That's just one step to help support them if they do have a cognitive delay, to getting them an IEP, which is an individual educational plan. Um, what comes from whatever ISD or school district that may be in that same area that the school is in. So for me, it'll be Detroit Public School Districts. We'll take that information, and if once a parent fill it out and we calculate the information in the classroom, we say, hey, baby Jordan is experiencing some cognitive issues around following 2 or 3 step processes. And with this, it's causing behavior issues. He lashes out. He may scream. He may holler. He may flip a chair. Um, Now we're doing observation. Now we're at the entry level person that you spoke of earlier, Robin. Now where this person is here now saying that they have a development delay. So now that entry level person is coming in trying to figure out which developmental delay it is. That person is very new. So now they're just looking at the behavior that the child is displaying versus the cognitive issue, versus the middle level person has been dealing with these type of students before and just have a little bit understanding of, okay, I can go to IDEA. I have another type of resources, because I've been to some conferences that Jordan had provided, and he gave me some tools to use. So I'm going to use that. And now I understand that, okay, if little baby Jordan is sitting for too long to do an activity, he's gonna trigger him. If baby Jordan doesn't have a particular snack that he likes to enjoy in the classroom when he wants it, that's going to trigger him. If I hover over him like a helicopter when he's playing with the other children by himself, that's going to trigger him. So that's where the middle level person is going to understand that, and they can show because they've been around and seen in other children. But now that person that's coming in that knows, okay, Jordan has this cognitive issue. Jordan also has a speech issue because he's not speaking when he's articulating that he's displaying his behavior. So now we have to have someone on the outside. So now we're going to come call Ms. Robin, because she's a specialist. She's a speech pathologist. Mr. Jordan can't do nothing about that because he's not professional on that. So you come in, Robin, you sit down with the child, and you realize within that first 2 observations, we'll give you 2 observations, because the first time you came out, you gave us some resources. Said, here, we need you to try these tools, try doing these activities, and we'll come back and do another observation within a month's period of time. We do another observation. We see that baby Jordan has getting a little worse. He's now, instead of the words he's using are vocal words. He's cussing now. So now
That's real.
he has words. Now he's using the words to curse versus saying stop, no, and don't. because stop, no, and don't coming from a teacher is triggering to him because he hears stop, no, and don't all the time at home and in his regular surroundings and environments outside of school. So now the proficient person who has all the knowledge in the world, they're coming back, they're going to monitor, they're going to support. Now they're coming into the classroom to sit with both the younger and the middle person to say, hey, these are some new tools and new strategies that you need to use. Are you putting these things on your lesson plan? Because now you're being intentional about the activity that you're trying to do for these young kiddos. Okay, baby Jordan can't sit there for 5 minutes. Let's give him some activities that he can do in two, three, two, three. You're getting your 5 minutes, but you're splitting his up within those small, and he's not being triggered. So now you're giving him opportunity to grow within those 2 and 3 minutes. You identify activities that's now calming him, so his behavior has shifted, but that's only from that proficient individual because now they're considered a TOT, a trainer of trainers, to come back in and model, support, and then follow back up. That's what their whole job is all about. So I hope that helped.
Absolutely, Jordan. That is such a real life example. I want you all to know that everything that Jordan just had to share with you is taking me back to my time in the classroom. So I know you are talking about lived experience there. And I, really like what you highlighted at the end there is that the person at that ECE third level, that advanced level, is extending for the person at the 2 level, like what resources they know about, helping them reflect on their practice. And so that advanced level, that proficient level is helping individuals who are in the practice and reflecting on their practice expand on that. And I think one thing that is coming to my mind today about all of this is like, that isn't just, what you read off here. Like, it is exactly this. Like, there is so much individualization and like contextual, information that really shapes what is happening. But we want to be able to paint this general picture of, the skill progression at these 3 levels and make sure you understand that you have this resource to support you identifying these skills, what that progression looks like, and how to think about it as it fits into the career pathway. So I want to share one more thing with you on this slide here. And that is this, that you could extend this framework that we've been talking about. I mean, we identified the competency, what's actually changing, how OJT supports that progression, and how mentor support supports that progression. But let's not forget about our mentors. Our mentors need support too. And so if you wanted to extend this, looking at each competency, you could identify the skill progression, identify the OJT task, identify the mentor support, and then also think about what supports do mentors need to be successful in what we're expecting from them. All right, so we're going to do a quick chat check-in before we move into rounding out of our PLC. And thank you all so much for your engagement already. You've been great. So I would love to hear from you in the chat. Respond to one of these questions. What was the hardest step in doing this process for your group? Where did you get stuck? What helped you move forward? Or what is one thing you would do differently when you apply this to your own wrap? So I just want to hear from you and get some feedback and some opinions from you. And those of you who have been with us know that whatever you put into the chat and whatever we talk about, we bring all that information together and use it to inform how we do this work moving forward. So anything you have to share is going to be very helpful. So I'd love to hear from you a response to one of those questions. give you a few more seconds here. Beth says that she had personally not thought about the ways mentors can support mentees on specific competencies. And then that's a win for us. Great. A little more to think about. Anybody else want to share? Go ahead and feel free to keep responding to this here in the chat, because like I said, we take it with us. And I'll just share what Jordan shared here. I believe the hardest step in the framework in the groups was if you do not have anyone that is at least close to the fire, you'll be lost. Right, exactly. So I tried really hard to have an ECE person in each group. But another reason, like a lot of you said, hey, we're intermediaries. We depend on our RTI folks and our employers to have the expertise. That doesn't mean that we can't help guide that using these tools, and then also making sure that once those are put together, that you're asking questions that are reflective of what this progression looks like. So helps for you all to know as well. All right, so I'm gonna follow up on those comments moving forward here. So thank you for sharing. We'll go to the next slide. We're gonna go into individual reflection and call to action. And so I just want you to think about this. So at the beginning, this is what I told you to write down. So at the beginning, we had, during our warm-up activity, we talked about the differences you notice between a mid-level person and an entry-level person. And one thing I just want you to reflect on that specific reflection that you had, whether it applied to ECE or not, is how could this shift in practice from entry to mid-level be recognized and supported through OJT or mentoring? Just another piece for you to think about. And then we have call to action here. This is going to be the last thing I ask you to do in the chat. So you can come off of mute or place it in the chat. But we want to just know, we want to hear from you. How will you utilize this framework that we use today to assess your own current RTI or OJT goals and the mentorship and making sure that the mentor support is in alignment? So do you want to share in the chat or come off of mute one way you might use what we did today in your own practice?
I just think one-on-ones work best for me because as a manager, it gave me the opportunity to see the overall picture. Most teachers really just want you to hear them out and provide them some practical ways to help support them in their space. So one-on-ones for me was a lot easier because now I would tell the teachers, you write down everything on the one-on-one paper that you want me to help you with or what you feel like we need before we meet. I'll take that information and I'll go back and I'll actually dive right on in to see what it is they need. I'll even cheat. I'll even go and watch the camera video in the classroom just to see how they engage in some of the things that they say they want to do inside.
Yeah, so you're doing
Then
your
from
own
there,
observations.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then from there, I'll even show them. Let's take a look. Pick any day out the month or any day out the week that you want to go through. And let's just look and see if some of the things that you're doing is an everyday thing that you may be not knowing that you're doing. Because
Yeah.
sometimes you'll be on autopilot and think that you're doing the right thing, but at the same time, you're just missing one or two steps. You may, instead of going 1, 2, 3, 4, you're jumping 1, 3, 5, 7. And those 2, 4, 6s that you're missing can either be a behavior issue or something that can stop you from having to have whatever it is that you're experiencing. So one-on-ones for me was a great way to cut out the shortcuts that a lot of teachers try to find, but they don't know that those shortcuts can be the ones that's hurting them. The shortcuts be the one that's actually cutting them in the end. So.
And you're bringing up something for me that, maybe you have somebody that's coming into their first work experience in an actual setting, and they've learned about what occurs at advanced levels and they're ready to get to it. But they could be not fully understanding the level one or level two, and that might be kind of like you said, hurting them, right? Like,
Exactly.
so
You you
being able to show them the progression also helps them understand where they're at.
because everyone wants to excel. Everyone wants to go further. Everyone wants to go higher. So yes, I understand you may feel as if you're on level 3, but let me show you what level 7 looks like. And
Yeah.
I guarantee you level 7 is going to require that you put more energy into this. And are you willing to cut a behavior? Because you have to shed some things in order to learn some things. So are you willing to cut off some of the behaviors that you were doing before in order to take on these new responsibilities to get you to where you want to go? Because everybody wants the lead teacher pay, everyone wants the specialist pay. But however, if you don't master where you at now and learn how to grow gradually, then you're going to fall short. You're never going to get to the position that you want to get to.
Absolutely. And Kelly, I see you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, I was just going to say that this discussion kind of one thing that stood out for me is from a mentoring standpoint is like a lot of times, and some of my friends here that also help build apprenticeships as an intermediary might also think the same way that we're trying to, I get the question a lot like, well, who can be my mentor? Like, does the person have to do? Like, what identify, like, what makes someone a mentor? And I think that this like activity has kind of made me think like, not just for early childcare, but maybe some of the other programs that we work with where like the mentor is not always the one that's like the best that produces the most at the job. It might be the person that actually like,
Know
can
somebody.
be as a trainer and can understands and has the patience to like maybe have someone fail a few times at something they're trying to do, hopefully not related to children, but like, that you have those
Yeah.
learning moments
Sure.
and can like provide that feedback and have that confidence to do so. Because that's a big question we get is like, who needs to be the mentor? But it's like, because the DOL doesn't like identify like they have to have completed the training themselves or they had to have
Yeah.
this. It's like very open to the employer's discretion as who to choose. And I think this does kind of help to like put it in framework of this is what you want to make sure that this individual can not only model the behaviors, but can also, reflect back on their own training and experience and things like that. So I feel like at first I was like, this doesn't relate to what I'm doing, but I guess kind of full circle with the mentorship, it does kind of, it can help more broadly, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, you open up a whole can of worms there. I mean, especially when it comes to early childhood education, we are steeped in understanding how children develop in this field. But adults learn differently than children. You use different approaches to adult learning than you do to child learning. And so somebody who may be advanced in child development might not have the skills they need to support adult development. So I do think that there is some things that we need to think about when we're talking about mentorship development. It's not just that they've gone through the training, but do they have the skills and the support they need to be able to help somebody progress in the same way? So it's not just do this, do this. It's why do we do this? How do we do this? And how can we do it better?
I
All
feel like
right.
we've all had those experiences with people that like they promoted and you're like, just because they like produce the most XYZ in the day, doesn't mean that they like relate well with people to like, interact or be able to be like a manager. So I feel like that's part of it
Exactly.
too.
Exactly.
Thanks.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and move on here. Thank you all so much. We're kind of getting into some logistics and we have 2 minutes. So I just want to share these things here. I wanted to give you a preview of our next couple PLCs, so May, June, and July. So we're excited to share that we have some national experts coming for our May PLC as guest presenters. They're going to be linking the development of leadership in ECE to workforce pipeline development, recruitment and retention, and mentorship engagement. Okay, so we're really excited for that. We hope you all come. June, we're going to take the opportunity to dive more deeply into these CDA changes. We'll have a guest presenter and try to understand a little bit more how these changes might affect what we do in our registered apprenticeship program. And on that note, I want to remind you that there's a nap time nugget webinar that I forwarded to you on April 20th that Teach is doing a presentation on those CDA changes. And in July, those who are still our current subrecipients are going to be presenting to a broader audience I want to share, we'll talk more about this coming soon, but I just want to share with you all, you're going to give a short presentation on your work based on your final report. So it won't be anything new or different. It's going to be a presentation of what you share with us in that final report. So that will be our July PLC. And then just reminder that we're opening these up to our broader audience for the remainder. And I just want to show you this here really quickly because I know we're at time. So you have a program report coming up due on the 30th and another SOE due for April on May 15th. We obviously always have our office hours coming up. One thing I want to highlight, we have our Inside Track newsletter feature opportunity. So Kelly is at West Michigan Works is going to be featured in there already, reached out for interest. If anybody else is interested in being featured, please let us know and we'll get you set up on details, but we're going to say May 15 deadline on that for a July publication.
What is this about, Nicole?
This is the Inside Track newsletter. This is a newsletter that the Workforce Development Agency, LEO, puts out in Michigan, and we're going to do a feature of the work you all are all doing. So Jordan, if Focus Hope is interested, let me know and I'll send you the details. We're just highlighting what's actually happening.
Yeah, send it over. Just
Okay.
send it on over.
Sounds good. Just a reminder about the Google Drive. I want to drop the post PLC survey in the chat so you can take that. That's always very helpful. So please do that. And then just another opportunity to take a screenshot of these due dates if you need them. Any questions? All right, with that, we are all set. Thank you all for your time. Thank you all for your sharing. I appreciate the engagement. And I do feel like we learned together today, which is the point. So thank you so much. Have a great day.
All right. Bye.